Due to the graphic nature of its content, listener discretion is advised.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom.
On this episode of Cigars and Sea Stories, I, Mike Penny, sit down with Sebastian Juslin in the Cigars and Sea Stories studio to have a little chat with our good friend Steve Sanderson, who we served with in 3rd Battalion 7th Marines Weapons Company. Steve, are you out there?
I'm here.
What's going on, brother? Hey, where are you calling us from again?
I'm in Fallbrook right now on the backside of Pendleton, staying with a buddy.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right, so you took the 15 up from San Diego, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's always a fun drive.
Yeah.
So what are you up to now, man? What are you doing?
Well, I've been out since 2008, and for the last 6 years I was working at a company that did commercial sales for law enforcement and military, and I left that job in January, and for the past 5 years or so I've been working on school at the same time. So for this last semester I was able to do just school. Now I've got the summer off, no school, no work, and decided to come down to San Diego because I found a course out here that's doing some executive protection work, and it's like a 35-day course. So I'm doing that down in Carlsbad, staying with a buddy, and then once I finish that, back in September, I'll be going up and finishing my last semester at school, and then back to work after that, hopefully.
Wow, you're a busy guy.
I'm trying to stay busy.
Heck yeah, man. That's what it's all about.
You having any issues feeling out of place at school? I know I felt like
I felt like Billy fucking Madison when
Yeah.
I was at school, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it did feel like that at first because when I started, I decided to go to community college first so I wouldn't be burning out my GI Bill on a full 4 years of school in case I wanted to use them for grad school. So I went through community college for about 2 or 3 years, and there I did feel out of place just because I felt like nobody there cared or wanted to be there.
right.
But once I got to a university and transferred after that, I was kind of getting in the flow and getting in the rhythm since I had been out of the Marine Corps for a bit. So I was able to adapt a little bit and go into a better community that actually cared about their schooling and wanted to be there. The age difference was still there, and obviously I was older by then, so I probably started at university at around 26, and everyone, the main age there was still like 18, 19. And I kind of just learned to adapt to the environment, just to kind of, for one, to kind of see how I'd fit in, but for two, to see if doing so would cause people to open up a little bit and not be so shut out. And it actually worked pretty well. But I think a lot of that also has to do with the type of school I was in. It wasn't as big. It's a private institution. So it just generally has a more friendlier nature. So it was a lot easier to fit in. But I did talk to guys who had come from other schools that were dealing with it a lot worse just because of the nature of the school and stuff like that. So for me, I have dealt with it, but not nearly to the extent I think it could have been. So I've been pretty blessed on that.
Absolutely. It sounds like it. Sounds a little different than my experience with school, I guess you could say. And it's funny, too, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to school in or around your original hometown, right? Your original
Right.
place of record. Okay.
Yeah, probably no more than 15 miles.
So you probably have, I would assume, some friends from the past who you...
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do. And one guy actually from high school that I joined the Marine Corps with is still around and is working at a local police department, basically in the town we grew up in. I don't see him too much. I see him here and there. But oddly enough, a lot of people I kind of knew in high school or kept contact with, I don't talk too much anymore because I think our interests are just different and our intentions with our life and our jobs are a lot different.
Mhm.
So I see them here and there. There's no like bad connections or anything. But they just have a different outlook and just kind of a getting by. Whereas one of the things the Marine Corps had kind of done for me is just gave me a better sense of purpose, but also a work ethic that made me want to work for more and find, more meaning in the things that I do. So for me, that's one of the things, oddly enough, that I see in a lot of these younger kids in school, is they have that drive. Unfortunately, they don't. This new generation of millennials and stuff like that I'm in school with are now anywhere from 7 to 10 years younger than me. So it's almost like a full generation, and they just do not have the work ethic. But at the same time, they kind of have that drive to achieve. So it's been interesting seeing the balance of kind of the different groups of friends and the benefits that both bring. But I talk to a couple of guys here and there when I see them. But I've kind of found that it's also healthy to have different groups of friends for those different things. And so you don't need to have like a one-stop shop when it comes to that. So it's kind of nice to have broken out and have the different people for the different needs in my life, but as well to be part of so many different things going on around my hometown. And just that change in that constant environment is actually keeping my mind away from maybe some of the things that have brought me down with the Marine Corps, stuff like that, and have just kind of given my mind something to focus on.
Nice. Fantastic. That's wonderful to hear. Yeah, living with a purpose is definitely a common thread through a lot of the conversations that we've been having with a variety of different guys, all sorts of different veterans. So
yeah,
it's funny because when I was going to school, I say that it was very different because I had moved to a state completely away from my home of record. Didn't know anyone going into it, sans maybe one or two people. And it was one of those things where it was like you just kind of like gotta accept it with open arms and jump into it. But at the same time, it's a it's a completely different world because I think that we come from, not to use the same metaphor, but to come from a different climate, a different place, a different world in general, and that is why the work ethic in turn is different. It's the op-tempo, the process-driven nature of where we went and what we were doing. So to be thrown into an area where it's going to be nothing but school and theories and case study, it was very difficult for me to be like, hey, can we just like go out and get some shit done already?
right.
So that's always been my concept, at very least, for whatever that's worth. So I'm glad that you have this outlook, because there's a lot of other guys out there, especially Marines, where it's like I always share the story of me going to entrepreneurship boot camp for veterans. And honestly, when I went to EBV, I was a Marine, and when I came home, I honestly felt like a veteran at that point. And I extend that to anybody else. Reach out, find your other veterans, understand it's one fight, one team. The op-tempo's there across all the branches. So I definitely agree with where you're coming from, as far as like I've seen the other generation as they're coming through. Hopefully they hit their stride as they enter the workforce, because otherwise they're going to have to compete with all of us.
Right. Yeah. And I get that. And that's kind of one of the blessings of understanding hard work and seeing the payoff from it. And I think one of the biggest things with the millennials and stuff is that need for autonomy that maybe our generation doesn't have as much. I mean, I think we all need it because we all want to feel respected and that we have a unique place wherever we're working. We all just don't want to be kind of told what to do, but we do want to have a little of that creative freedom to explore and to kind of make our own mistakes and learn and not be micromanaged. But at the same time, with the millennials, because everything has been so a lot easier access, especially with technology. I mean, they're just not, in school, you're not doing the research like we used to in school. And
right.
I mean, I can remember when computers were started being used across the board through
Oregon Trail, you mean?
Elementary or junior high, right? Stuff like that, where you had the computer lab that had one computer.
Oregon Trail.
And everyone had to take their time, whereas now it's almost just a requirement for everyone to have a computer. Even sort of through high school for me too. I mean, I wasn't that far out of LA, so we're not, that far behind in the sticks. I mean, we're pretty up to speed. But even then, like, not everything was required to be typed because not everyone owned a computer. So things were still handwritten. There was still a lot of research that was done in the library with books. It's not just that easy to go online and search for it like it is now. So especially getting to college, like for me, it's been years since I graduated high school and then jumping back into this. And now professors are saying, hey, just submit it online. You don't have to print anything out. I hardly print anything at school. I can sit at a coffee shop and do homework and send it in and just go home. I don't even have to be there. I mean, just the ease of things is, I feel like I'm completely on my own doing stuff. And it's great because I have like my own follow through to do that. But you have a lot of these students that the moment something's at a place, they're like, well, I'm not going to do it because now it's a lot of, manual work to get it done. Now I actually have to go to the library and do this. I can't search it online. And so there's just this like, well, if there's one thing wrong, then it all falls apart.
Right.
So there's just this like, and then a lot of people too, because they don't have all that hard work of doing things manually or, having to mow the lawn because, before that's how their parents did it. But now it's like you've got gardeners to do it, and just little things around the house too. It's just like, why do we need to do that? We have things that just make life easier. So without that hard work to back up your, kind of upbringing, you fall back on things and you don't have that there. So what it does is going for jobs and stuff like that, they're less likely to kind of work themselves up to a position. They just want the position. They want to get a school and go, well, I got a bachelor's. And unfortunately, with the way things are now, it's like a bachelor's is the new high school diploma.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of jobs want the master's for those leadership positions. So unfortunately, that's another thing that's hitting veterans too, is guys are getting out using their GI Bill, getting their undergrad degree and then going into jobs. And it's like, yeah, well, the economy's garbage right now. So sorry, guys, but we're going to need a master's if you want the position that actually pays the money. And now they got to go through even more school. And so it's almost like having school paid for doesn't really do much because they got to pay to get their master's anyway. So it's so much work. The hill has gotten so much bigger to get to where people were before and doing just fine.
Another thing is kind of a shift in our perspective on what life is supposed to be. Used to be, there were a lot more entrepreneurs. There were a lot more people just building their own businesses, and it was actually fruitful to do so. But as farming has subsided and you can do more with less people, all those guys are coming into cities, and then it's that drive to join an industrial workplace, that working machine of our economy, and there doesn't seem to be a focus on anyone actually wanting to live a certain life,
right,
or actually make a difference. And it's like,
right, and to caveat to what you're saying, the double bottom line, adding value to every equation. No matter what, any situation you go into, how do I add value to this? And it literally can be that simple, man. It's like, how are we going to add value in every aspect of what we're doing? And that doesn't mean that, you can't go out and have a good time and all of that other stuff. But me personally, my own internal philosophy is just looking at that and saying, what can I do right now? That, in my opinion, is exactly what we were taught. Because even if you're on the cordon, you're adding value. If you're kicking in the door, you're adding value. Like, no matter what, if God forbid somebody gets wounded in the line of fire, I'm holding security. I'm not looking over my fucking shoulder to see if Juslin's holding security. I know he is. The dude's adding value to the equation. So, like, a lot of the other stuff, too, that I've really seen go by the wayside is integrity. And that has a lot to do, in my opinion, with a lot of these graduates coming out and saying, like, hey, I want that high paying job. I want all of these other things and stuff like that. You bring value to the table all of the time, you'll get that high paying job. If you lose your integrity along the way, it's just not going to happen. Or excuse me, it just shouldn't happen.
Unless you're an investment banker.
Well, and it's funny specifically because it's like, a little background here. all three of us served together on both tours to Ramadi in 05 and again in 07. And Sanderson and I were together in Cat Red during the first tour. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a driver as well, right?
First deployment, yeah.
Yep. Dude, I'm telling you right now, man, it's hard as shit being a driver sitting there on a cordon, and
Yeah.
and you're just sitting there going, look, I understand that I'm the ride, but you're not just a wheelman. I don't know if you had the same takeaway. Please, by all means, feel free to add to it. But when I was a driver, I always just thought of the gun. And how am I going to get the gun into position so that they can do work? And that's the most value-adding thing that I could possibly do. Like, I honestly took pride in PMing my vehicle because
Right.
I understood that it was going to be the horse that was going to take us into battle. So it needed to be in tip-top shape. So, I don't know if you struggled with that at all, when you were sitting on the cordon also.
I did. I mean, there are a couple things I did to make it a little more interesting. Because after all, I did have control of the truck. And usually the guys that get put in that position are generally on like their first deployment, stuff like that, because they're positions that don't really require a lot of leadership. I mean, they require a lot of the initiative to make decisions on movement and go in the right places. But a lot of times, your VCs are calling the shots, directing things, and they need to get out and be with the guys on the ground. So I understand the role of it, and you just kind of fill it. But I know, a couple times, because I was Alpha Section, I was fourth truck, so I was rear security. And there were a couple times we would come through, and the other trucks would just be so far ahead, you really got to try and catch up. And it came through checkpoint 295 once in Ramadi, and was turning left to go back down the MSR to our fob. And a lot of the other guys were going so quick, so I decided to go through it really quick. I knew the truck, I was comfortable driving. And just kind of slid it through the intersection just for fun. My VC just screamed at me. He just, he hated it because he wasn't the one in control. And I'm like, this is fun. Like, I got control of this thing, And this is one of the most dangerous intersections in the world right now. And I'm just drifting through it like it's with an up armor Humvee going, at any minute this thing could roll over, and my gunner, hopefully he's ready to duck, But so there's different stuff like that you did, and I remember a couple other times, and I did it unconsciously, but you always try to swerve potholes and not run over lines, and so you're always looking in the road. And as the fourth truck, it's really easy to do. You just watch the trucks in front of you, and you're like, well, I mean, I'm not really making the way, I'm just following, and if they went through it, I'll follow them. But they may go through something, and I might go around a pothole a different side or something. Or whatever it was, but I remember my VC always yelling at me, and one time he just got pissed off that he looked over at me, he's like, Sanderson, what the hell is wrong with you? And I was like, what are you talking about, Corporal? And he's like, how come every time we pass a pothole, you got to put it on my side of the truck? I was like, I mean, you make a good point, and now that I think about it, I'll do it intentionally, but that really wasn't the issue. But personally, I don't want to get the truck blown up on any side.
Right, of course.
But I mean, if I get to
much?
choose, yeah, it's going to be on your side.
Right. Oh, Jesus.
So, but yeah, I know what you mean. There were a couple of times we do some night ops and stuff where you'd have block parties, or you'd have a bunch of raids.
No.
Guys would dismount, and you'd literally be sitting on a corner for just hours and just listening to the radio for those little beeps, and that house is clear, and we're going to the next one. You're just like, come on. And you're sitting there with your Kevlar and MVGs, and it's just burning your forehead. And, but I remember one of the nights we were out, we were posting a cordon for a block party. We had a truck on each corner of the block, so we were pretty far away from each other. But we had visibility. Each truck could at least see two other trucks because they were at each corner, and so we had the entire block covered with machine guns. We had all the dismounts going through. We had a couple platoons out that were doing this, and maybe some support units that were coming through with us. And we were told that we were supposed to link up with Cat Black because they had the interpreter, and they were finishing a mission. They were going to pass him off to us and get him in with the guys inside the house so that they could start running through all these houses with the terp, and just give them better communication. And they told me, hey, look for their convoy. They should be pulling up. They're going to pass them off to you. Just call us in. We'll come out and grab them. I remember sitting there thinking, like, these guys aren't showing up. I don't know what's going on, and I don't see them, and I don't have their radio frequency, and I'm hoping that if I just see some trucks driving down the road, I'll flag them down and maybe bring them over. and I'm sitting there and I'm looking, and mind you, like we're sitting on an down south of Baseline, which back in Ramadi in 2005, that was a bad area to be. And
like power line.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bad area. I mean, that's southeast portion of the city, and we didn't want to be there. And I'm sitting there just waiting for something to happen. I think I was kind of next to the fire station. But a block down, and it was kind of a longer block, I see another convoy sitting down there. And I'm like, maybe that's Cat Black. And I don't know if I'm supposed to flag them down and get them to come over here, but I know they're supposed to drop off turp. And they're just sitting there. And I don't know if it's them, but I know they're Humvees. And I'm trying to use an IR beam to get their attention, or just get someone to pick up the fact that I'm sitting here trying to get their attention. And I'm having my gunner like stand up, trying to wave them over. Like nothing's happening. They're just sitting there. And I'm like, gosh, I'm gonna get yelled at if we don't get this terp. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna pull something kind of stupid, but at the same time, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make this happen, because if this is it, at least I won't get yelled at. And so I don't think I ever told anybody I did this, because I didn't want to get my ass chewed. But I told my gunner, I was like, hey, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I need you to cover me. And as a driver, I dismounted and told him, orient your gun for a second. I was like, I'm going to run down to that truck and get his attention. I need to talk to these guys to see if he's got our terp. I said, so I'm going to leave you in the truck for a minute by yourself, but you're going to have to cover my ass, because I'm going down this street alone, and we're south of Baseline. So as a driver, like, I got out, and as quickly as possible, I grabbed my M16, and I booked it by myself, full block.
Oh my God.
Down south of Baseline, and I just ran my ass off in the middle of the night, all the way down to this truck. And the only thing I was thinking was, holy shit, I hope they don't see me now and think I'm somebody else.
Because now you have a weapon.
Right, because now I'm a lone guy, and it's just like now I was like, shit, I did not think about this before I did it.
Did you have your Viper on your helmet? I'm
trying to wave my hand, like thinking, yeah, I've got my Kevlar, my NVGs. I'm in a full flak, and I ran probably faster than I had during a PFT in full gear, because I was so scared. I'm south of Baseline. I'm alone. I just left the truck with the gunner. I'm trying to get a hold of this other convoy that's not paying attention, and I'm booking it down this street. And I'm trying to like cover all of my angles, because I'm the only one covering myself right now. And I'm hoping that this unit doesn't light me up. I get down there, and one of the guys cracks the door and opens it up. And, I'm like, hey, are you guys Cat Black? They're like, yeah. I'm like, good. I was like, I'm Cat Red Alpha. I was like, you guys are supposed to link up with us to give us the terp. You guys have them? They're like, yeah, we got them. I was like, good. Pull your truck up. We need to grab them from you. We're raiding this block. And he's like, okay. And I was like, also, I need you to cover my ass, because I got to run back to my truck. It's just me. And I ran all the way back down Baseline to my truck and got in. Was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And they ended up pulling down, and we called over the PRR to get them to come out to pick up the terp. But yeah, Jesus. That was kind of my exciting moment as a driver to go, I'm dismounting, I'm out of this truck.
Black Ops for Sanderson.
Oh dear God, Sandy. That's awesome, dude. I had no idea you went running down the street like that, man.
No, I don't think I told anyone, because the gunner knew, but I don't think I told anybody else. I was just like, dude, I'm gonna get my ass chewed so bad.
I remember when you guys switched billets. That was how do I put it? I don't want to. It was humorous from his perspective. Let me just put it that way. Because he's like, dude, I've spent hours in that gun, and Sandy gets some,
Yeah, I was able to shoot and just completely stole his glory and all the training that he spent. And, spent all my times on the range as a forward observer with mortars, doing my thing, kind of just calling for fire. And we get to Iraq, cross-train, and I'm the one shooting the machine gun.
Jesus.
I remember sitting down after that, and we dismounted, and it was just me and Schaeffel, and he looked back, he was pissed, and I picked up one of the casings, and I was like, here, it's a souvenir for you.
That's fucked up. Oh, man. But what are you going to do, man? You're the guy behind the gun during that moment. It's just, hell yeah, dude. You got to lock and load. makes sense. Uh, yeah, it's funny because we had Matt Feld on the show not too long ago. Fantastic individual. And he and I shared or split the duties, if you want to call it that, of high back driver. Remember that?
Right, I remember that.
And, oh, Jesus, man. I mean, like, it's one thing to go outside the wire in a gun truck. And, and I was lead truck for Bravo. And, when you're driving around doing land nav, of course, that's like a completely different aspect of the mission of a driver. But I definitely know exactly what you're talking about as far as just like following the truck ahead of you, only from the high back's perspective, we're like, fuck, man, I ain't got anybody back there. Like, the VC over here is like, got like a saw, it depends on who I'm rolling with, whoever winds up being a high back VC. But, that for me was always the crazier moments. And I say obviously because QRF is like, I don't know. For me, QRF was the epitome of everything we could have done when we were overseas. I absolutely loved being on QRF, which might sound crazy, but there's something about quick reaction when you're like, get on the trucks. We made it outside the wire in under 2 minutes. We're in a firefight. We're here. It's not a cordon. You're fucking drifting through intersections like what you were talking about. And just doing whatever you can to get the wounded out, doing whatever you can in order to quell the firefight or just take it to the enemy, And it's
and it was, you kind of knew when you were going out that you were going out for a specific purpose. Something had happened and you were trying to process what it was.
Yes, definitely. And process is definitely the correct word because, I don't know if you had a squawk box in your truck. But like in lead Vic, of course, you have a double stack radio, so you have squawk boxes that are going off constantly. So trying to process and then filter that information amongst the entire section to make sure that we're all swinging out the way that we need to. I mean, it was like, the VCs trying to figure out where the hell we're going. The driver's like, hey, I can land nav us, but like, what the hell's going on? What's the SA from the platoon's point of view? LT's in the back telling higher what's going on. And then like the section leader is like conveying everything else to the other vehicle commanders, so it's just, I don't know, it's chaos in its true form. And yet at the same time, we have all of those processes that are already put into place for us to be able to just go out and do our job. I mean, that's
right.
Remember the term just like that was sexy?
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Like you roll up and you had stay and support and it was like the bursting bomb, and everybody comes running back to the trucks in like one fluid motion, or it's like a drop and drive, and you're just like, oh man, that was so sexy. And those moments happened on QRF because you stopped thinking about all the things that could potentially go on, and you were just engaged in the moment. It was like, yes, we're gonna do our best work. It's like the glass factory.
Yeah.
Remember the glass factory? And it was just
I think our whole platoon, I think both sections pushed out on that because we were already staged before QRF.
Yes, and that was quite possibly the most fucked up thing I've ever seen in my entire life, without a doubt. And dude, I got a video. I was looking through videos the other day, and Willie was bouncing on the tail end of the truck, right? And like we're all like singing Buttercup and all of this other crap, right? The way that you do before you go out on patrol. We're hard men, so let's sing Buttercup and Neil Diamond. Anyway, explosion goes off while, I think section leaders were in the COC, prior to us stepping. And I think about that day. I mean, probably not every day, don't get me wrong, but like the explosion that rocked us, I still definitely remember the feeling of that, and just not panic by any means, but just utter confusion. Like, was that a V-bid? You know, and then it's, section leaders running down to the clearing barrels, like, we got to push you out. Glass factory just got hit, and just pulling right out of there and leading up to, like, where we'd eventually hold our cordon, and just seeing the carnage that was out there. I mean, 40 plus individuals that are blown apart. Yeah, it's like, my God, man. So the reason why I even describe that scene is because the driver can describe the scene. The gunner can describe the scene. The dismount, who gets out and picks everybody up and throws them in the back of a bongo truck, can describe the scene. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. I just always try to push that it's one team, one fight. No matter what your MOS is, no matter what you're originally trained in, or what have you, it's just that moment in time, what kind of value you're going to add to the equation.
Yeah. I was actually doing some writing recently, and within the last 6 months too, and that was one of the events I had put down. And I can always send you the thing if you'd like to read it or post it or stuff like that. And it's got a little creative aspect to it. I incorporated some other unrelated stories just from my own life, but that was one of the scenes I like described in like a creative detail that's really helped kind of put things in perspective. But I do remember one of the things coming back off that patrol too is when we got back into the hooch for the debrief, the platoon commander came in for red and pulled us all together, and it was just somber. It was just quiet. No one was really saying anything, and there was just that essence that everyone knew, and there was a respectful stillness in the air that was just very different. And it was like a normal debrief. People are kind of just dragging in, like, hurry up, get the last guy. Like, who are we missing? All right, here's what's going on. But it was just like, there was ultimate patience. Like, people were just kind of stuck. And like, wow, you could tell everybody was trying to process it. No one was really saying anything. No one was rushing anything. It was all quiet voice. And it was like, hey, let's just wait for LT. And it was like, nobody had a care in the world that it was taking forever, or whatever it was. And he comes in and was kind of quiet for a second, and it's just the first, I don't remember anything else he said, but the first thing he said was, if you didn't see anything that was out there, if you didn't see what was going on, then count your blessing. Because this will probably be one of the worst things you'll see on this deployment. Yep. And then went through the debrief with whatever action we took or this and that, and it was almost like we already knew what he was going to say before he had to say it.
Yeah, man. I definitely remember the reverence that was being, had at that moment, because I definitely remember the same feeling, when they came in and told us, that we had lost Tapia.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, that was extremely painful, and at the same time, it was kind of that, like, respect for a fallen brother. It's that same stillness that occurs at the end of our memorial ceremonies when we're on Hurricane Point. And during those ceremonies, it was like the entire FOB just fell silent. And, the 21 guns and it just, I don't know. And, I mean, going out to Snake Pit, for Bedard's memorial ceremony, it was the exact same way. And going through the memorial ceremonies that we had when I went on my third tour to Afghanistan, I can tell you, it's... Everybody has situational awareness. It's not like the posts all shut down. If anything, they probably paid more attention.
Yeah.
Because we were laying one of our own to rest. But it was just, going back to the glass factory, it was just such a... I don't even want to say that it was crazy, because that's not even the correct word. It was something where I still can't process it with my feeble human mind. That's like the only way to put it. Like I don't think that my brain can honestly look at that event in any other way from just a sheer act of terrorism, and don't try to put reason to it. You know? And that's the whole thing where it's like, oh my God, this happened right outside our front door. You know?
Yeah, that's what was crazy about it, is that literally was not even 5 minutes outside the gate. I mean, it probably took us 2 minutes once we got out there. It was there.
Yeah,
we could have walked there.
It was across the bridge. I mean, that was it. It was across South Bridge, and
You
bam.
guys want to bring the light real quick, like the quick background on what was going on that day over there with the voting and everything?
To fill everybody in on what's going on here, you know, we're hanging out on the clearing barrels, and everybody was, correct me if I'm wrong, Sanderson, all of these Iraqis were lined up getting ready to join the Iraqi police force.
Right.
Right.
And,
It wasn't voting. It was. That's right.
So they were all getting ready to enlist. It was literally at the gate of the glass factory, which is surrounded by a big, huge wall and a fence line that goes all the way around it. And a suicide vest bomber stepped in line and basically waited until he was smack dab in the middle of everybody, and then detonated himself.
Right, and when I did some writing on this, I did a little research on some of the background. But I want to say the whole context for that was they wanted to bring in and rebuild the kind of police and military force, and so they had this, I guess not audition, but whatever you call it, this recruiting process to bring people from the city to come in. And by that point, people had started to kind of see that some of the insurgents were turning on their own people. And so they weren't as opposed to the police and military because we're seeing their own friends and family get killed, and they're like, hey, well, if we kind of start policing our own city, maybe we can do something about this. And that was kind of the whole point of that, was for them to have a presence in their own city, to police their own, to take pride in their community. And so in doing that, we didn't put that many Americans out there. I mean, for the most part, the reason why most of the KIA were Iraqi was because we wanted to not have a large American military presence. And I think there was only an Army, maybe one or two Army guys and maybe one Marine, like canine handler. And so I think what had happened is, I think we did take at least like 2 American KIA, but maybe like 2 or 3 that were there. And the rest were all Iraqi. But from what I read in one of the articles, it said that the canine handler had been going back and forth between people, just kind of sniffing. And I think the dog detected something. And when he went to look into it, I think the person kind of spooked and was like, okay, it's now, and just kind of detonated it. And so I think that's kind of what set it off. I don't know if they were waiting to bait more people or what, but I believe that's what happened. I have to look into it. But if you search online, you can actually find articles and info about that day. And kind of some of the more backstories from some of the officers' side who actually wrote some documents on it.
Wow. After actions and whatnot.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that, because I think the most impressive thing was when they reopened the recruiting efforts. Like twice as many people showed up.
Yeah.
It was a day or two afterwards, and double. We're waiting in line going, there is no fucking way that we were going to let this happen in our city. And
yeah.
And whether or not that was the true notion or the sentiment that was shared, I was pretty prideful in seeing that. It was a similar sense of pride when you see, images of people holding up their blue thumb, showing that they voted.
Right.
So I'm glad that it wasn't, because I can honestly tell you that I was sitting there going, nobody's going to show up. Because at that moment in time, I was 19. like I wouldn't have showed up the next day,
Yeah.
and twice as many.
Yeah, and I think what really did that was the exact presence that was there. I mean, you only had 2 Americans or so. So I mean, what the city saw was that their own people were killed, and that it wasn't just an attack to try and kill Americans, because there really wasn't a presence there for that. I mean, this person deliberately went in and killed their own people for the purpose that they were standing for. And so a lot of people were outraged, and a lot of that caused a different mentality within the city of Ramadi, and started to show by the time we got there our second point, with the way that the insurgency was, there was just some red on red fighting. And we'd hear gunfights that was like, is that us? Are those our units? I don't think that's us. And they were killing each other until the point that the sheiks and the leaders came to us like, hey, we want to help you. This is pissing us off. They've killed this leader and disgraced him by leaving him out in the street. And so it just turned over to us, and they said, hey, traditionally we were against you, and we're on your side now, or at least want to help you, because this is our town and we want this back. We're sick of this happening, and we're sick of our own countrymen killing each other. What intel do you need? And a lot of it was from the glass factory. A lot of that really created a shift in Ramadi.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was very strange coming off 05, 06. We talk about this all the time. Just working with Juslin all the time. 2007 was just a completely different environment, even though it was the exact same battlefield.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I was really, really pissed that we were going to wind up going back to Ramadi. That was the last place on earth I ever wanted to go back to. I think, in my opinion, the second deployment was much more difficult than the first deployment. Not in a crazy factor of 10, but much rather in the, when's contact actually going to happen? Oh my God, they want to put up Alaska barriers everywhere? Jesus.
Right. Yeah, and logistically it was completely different. Our mission had completely changed.
Right. Yeah.
We were handing out rice bags, flour bags. We were contracting people to fix buildings and unclog sewage drains and fix power lines and sweep the streets. It was a humanitarian effort all the way.
Yeah.
And that's not something that the Marine Corps infantry is typically used for.
Right. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. That's actually one of the other things that we commonly hit on, is being the warfighter organization where the sole purpose of Marines is to go down range and actually, cause and manage chaos and havoc. But yeah, it was very fuck, man, I don't want to say that it was an Army-esque mission, but it was like, Jesus, man, tip of the spear, huh? I'm really glad that we can sit on a cordon for 12 hours and watching these Egyptians clean up the sewers that we blew up the first tour. Like, how much more irony do you need in a deployment? So,
Yeah, well, not just that, but the fact that now that we were doing that alongside Iraqi police officers who were fighting us the previous deployment, just the whole thing was back asswards.
Dude, do you remember when we demailed? Shit.
Oh, OPVA?
Yeah, was it?
I remember demailing that. Yeah, across from 7th Story.
Yeah. Well, what was the other one? It was down by Falcon off Sunset. It might have been Falcon or the CCP that was down there.
It was the other one. It wasn't.
OP Haria?
Yes.
Yes, it was Haria. Look at this guy. Fucking
with the
good
memory.
pull. Yeah, got a steel trap.
I think those are the only 2 I remember. Aside from Al-Haz, where we had forward stage QRF.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's where Big Balls was. That badass goat. That dude was awesome. Deuce. That's his name. Deuce. Yes.
I think I got pictures of Deuce somewhere.
Oh, dear God.
Oh,
you
dude,
need to send those to us.
As soon as you'd pull up, he would just be standing there. You'd get out of your Humvee, and he'd like line you up, and then he'd charge you, and then you just kick him right in the head.
Yeah, he was like cross-eyed, and he would eat cigarette butts, still lit. He would like He'd feed him Red Bull. He would lick JP8 off the ground. And that thing was just not edible. But the Iraqis constantly wanted us to, like, oh, let us kill it. We'll make some food out of it. We'll serve you guys food. And it was like, after we fed it, no.
But he was fun to play with, though.
Oh yeah.
So there's that. But no, man, what I was saying is with OP Huria, we demilled it. And just kind of going back to your comment there on how, the same guys we were fighting basically switched jerseys, in 2006 and decided to join our team in 07. We demilled OP Huria. And no joke, like immediately after that, 3 Iraqis walked into where the COC was and pulled 3 155 shells out of the wall.
Oh.
Like out of like the adobe wall with like mud and hair and shit coming out of it. Like, oh my God, dude, that was our COC. Like, how in the hell did this happen? And then they started going through, I know shit, watch this like unfold in front of me. Like those 3 went in and started pulling rounds out. And then like another group of Iraqis went in there and like pulled out like 3 or 4 more mortar shells out of like a birthing area, like all of this other stuff. Now keep in mind, things that you would not find, like even during a thorough search. I mean, if you Chinese field day that motherfucker and grabbed everything out of it, like you still weren't going to find these rounds without actually doing some demolition and getting into the walls. But it was like, fuck, man, I wonder what else was like the Gov Center, for Christ's sake. Jesus, man, I wonder what they had in there.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, God, dude. It's one of those things where it's like, dude, I'll dance with the devil. Don't get me wrong. Like, you got to do some shit. You got to sack up and go down range. But, like, my God, dude, in the COC, they just pulled that shit straight out of the wall. Like, what else aren't you telling us? Like, what else is you switch jerseys. Give us all the intel, you bastard. Like, God damn. Yeah, dude.
You gotta wonder what happened. I mean, they seem to be all about it. And then here 7 years later, I mean, or what is it?
Fuck,
8.
man.
8.
Well, 8 since our last deployment, and 10 years since we were there the first deployment.
Yeah. This September will be.
Yeah, 10 years from when we got there.
That's nuts, man. I was so.
I heard something today that I thought was very interesting, and one of the guys, the instructors for this course, was talking about doing some PSD work in Iraq, back in the early days of 03, 04, 05, kind of that time frame, and how PSD teams are going through, and just talking about kind of the nature of Iraq and the politics there and how they work and do stuff, and just some of the ways that they were before we pushed in, and how they ran under a dictator, and how there were, goods and bads to that, and that the country was stable, it had things going and stuff like that. The downside is obviously the corruption that was happening from it, and the dictator's son going through colleges and raping women and just doing horrendous things that they got away with because of it. But at the same time, we go in, overthrow this dictator, and now you have a whole different mindset for the country, and it escalates to kind of where we are now. And what he said that was interesting is obviously we went in with a mindset to give them a democracy and to give them a country that they could hold and they could run. But what was a great point is that the country had been run like that for the last thousands of years. They're used to a dictator. And what I never considered was that the people of a country that has a dictator think that way. And they are a people that need to be dictated. And they don't have the initiative that the American mindset does. We're very autonomous here. We value our freedom. We value our individuality. And any kind of sociology class or psychology class will teach you that you have countries that are very family oriented, and there's not a lot of capitalist kind of business pursuits because it's just family oriented. We just want to take care of our families. Whereas America is very like, hey, let's get this going. I want to start this, the American dream, and we kind of don't realize how that doesn't transfer to other cultures. So we go into a country to try and bring democracy to a group of people who only understand how to be dictated. They don't know how to dictate. It's destined to fall. And so when we pulled out and we turned it over, it's almost like, yeah, no shit, it's going to fall, because you have a bunch of people that are running around that don't know how to run that, because they need to be told what to do. And they're happy that way. You know, that's the odd portion, is we're trying to give them, when we gave them the autonomy, and they're just like, I don't know what the fuck to do with this. And the country collapses, you know, and you have a group like ISIS that comes in and they're just like, well, I'm out of here, you know, and it's unfortunate to hear that half Ramadi is just, it's been deserted. I mean, people just fled. They left. Yeah. They're not going to stick around for that, you know, and it's just like, it's a ghost town now.
You know, it's funny because you remember Charlie, our interpreter? He was an American, but his family fled from Iraq, and his father actually helped overthrow Saddam through a lot of intel. And it's so funny because he truly adopted the understanding, just as you had explained, our individuality and the ability to achieve the American dream. And he had the best analogy. He said, a dog gives birth to a puppy, and that puppy's raised in captivity, right? Gives birth to another dog, so on and so forth. Generations after generations have been raised inside of this one cage, and all of a sudden somebody just swung the gate open, and it's going, you know, it's kind of like, you know,
it's
that
the allegory of the cave.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's
they're comfortable in the darkness.
Right. And the understanding of, you know, well, and also on top of it, the gentleman who winds up making his way out of the cave and can potentially show new light, you know, is ostracized because of it.
Yep.
You know, so the pushback that comes out of that, you know, you swing the door open. I don't want to say that it deserves leadership in order to show how to use your freedom, you know, because that's yet another imposing force. But the encouragement aspect has to be there also. Like, hey, dude, you know, you're free. Like, that guy's gone. He's dead. So, like, what do you do now? Like, whatever you want to do. Like, holy shit. You know what I mean? Like, whatever I want to do. Like, oh, my God. You know, hit the panic button immediately. And you had mentioned the family-oriented also. What I find to be fascinating is that Iraq, I found to be very family-oriented and yet lived under a dictator. And I say that in my own observation because I was astonished to find that there were no homeless people. It's a shameful act if one of your family members goes without a home. You know, which is why on a lot of our raids we'd go into houses and shit and be like, oh my God, everybody's asleep in the middle of the... Wait, where are we? Is this a living room? I don't know. There's a fucking stove and like weird floor mats all over the place. Anyway, right, the whole family, the whole damn family is asleep on there. Hey, we only want your dad, all right? So like kids, just chill out real quick. Don't worry, we'll bring him back, I promise. But it really is a family mentality that's acting under a dictatorship, or was, and they all lied. No matter what, if you weren't a member of the community, you weren't getting any goddamn intel. That just wasn't going to happen. It was like, dude, you know, like I think the only time, and maybe you guys have other sea stories on this, the only time I've ever had an Iraqi give me any intel is when it, no joke, was not an Iraqi. And what I mean by this is like, oh God, we were doing something. I don't know why the hell I was out of the truck, but we were doing something, and we were kicking in doors or some shit, and a lady of all people, like an old woman, right? She didn't care if she got stoned to death for talking to, you know, a heretic. So anyhow, she came up to me and was like, "That's a bad guy." And it's like what? Like, what do you mean that's a bad guy? And she just kept saying Syrian, or whatever, you know, whatever in their Arabic language. I'm not even sure what the hell they call it. But it was like the only time that they would call him out is, that guy's not a member of my community, so I don't want that dude around. So obviously that guy has to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
So it's family oriented, under a dictatorship, and ostracizes outsiders.
Right, but I mean, at the same time, like you also got to understand, if you were an Iraqi and another country had come in,
Right.
you didn't really understand why, you'd naturally be defensive. And so there's a part of me that was I understood some of the hostility just from your average person. And,
Oh, yeah.
and we did try to respect that. We tried to go through houses like, hey, look, we may not want to be here as much as you don't want us here, but we're here, so you're gonna have to deal with us. So if you just cooperate, come with us, And a lot of times raids were like that. You went into a house and people were like, "Hey, it's cool. My family's here. Do you guys want some water? Check the house." And it was like, cool. And we did. We just would go through, check stuff real quick. Hey, thanks, salam alaikum, and take care. And you left, and there was no problem. I remember being a gunner on second deployment too, and standing up, and sometimes there's people standing in the street handing me chai. I was like, "Hey, cool." They just were like, yeah, it's good to see you too.
Right.
So it was hit or miss with people, and it just took some time for them to go, you know what, if they're just going to be here, we'll just embrace it. It definitely wasn't that easy going first deployment, but there was a lot more hostility. But it was kind of cool to kind of see a culture and see a people and see how they reacted to a military, and it wasn't just you roll down the street and everyone's running from Humvees. People were they would carry on and kind of pretend like you weren't there.
Right, because you were another fixture within their society at that point. You were a part of their day.
Once they kind of realized we got to the point where we just weren't shooting at everything, they were just like, oh, well, then, they're just here. If they need to talk to me, they'll stop me. Otherwise, I'm not going to stop for them, and they'll do their thing, I'll do my thing.
Yep. I can look at it now and say, like, I went over there, or joined the Corps with all these altruistic intentions and so on. When my boots hit the deck, I thought to myself, and I'm using these singular pronouns for a reason, because I internalized it and I said, listen, my family's on the other side of the world. You can't fight for your family, in my opinion, when you're on the other side of the world. You need to have an anchor amongst it. And it can't just, it can just be your brothers. And that's understandable, but there needs to be a sense of compassion in what you're doing, because being a warfighter, especially Marines, no better friend, no worst enemy, I'm glad that we had those non-kinetic engagements with the local population. I'm just as glad that when the enemy did rear his ugly head, we killed the enemy. That's why we couldn't shoot 50 cals all the time. That's why we couldn't shoot slap rounds all the time. You can't have that shit going through 7 or 8 buildings, taking out families for the people and shit. So
right, or Mark 19s or mortars.
Right, exactly. Jesus.
Which basically made me unemployed as a mortarman. So.
Well, it was like, shit, dude. What? Sandy and I were in SOI together. He, let me borrow his cell phone every once in a while. Thank you, by the way. I know that was against the rules. But
well, you were the one that brought a motorcycle to SOI anyway.
Whoa, gotta bring that shit up. Gotta bring up the motorcycle.
So the cell phone wasn't nearly as much of a problem as the safety risk that could have cost us our libo.
I love how he's like, the safety risk that could have cost us our libo.
Not your wife.
Not like
our libo.
You're unlicensed. You're illegally riding a motorcycle. Oh, hey, by the way, that's so fucking illegal. And you're in SOI. Just, oh, Jesus, that was stupid. That was such a bad idea. I was telling Juslin about that the other day, because I will not name his name, but our SOI instructor was a phenomenal human being, and I honestly can say, Sergeant I. You remember him.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say his full name on the air for fear of him getting in trouble. But he looked at me, and you remember Toby.
Your name is out there.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. He can look me up. But he was like, hey, you want paperwork or you want punishment? And I was like, punishment. I'll do anything to not I remember I actually said, I'll do anything to not have this on my permanent record. And he's like, your fucking permanent record? Like, you were the Buddhist motherfucker I've ever met. And So he had me with like my boots on his deck, laying at parade rest with my chest on a Kevlar and my dog tag sandwiched in between my breastplate and the dome of the Kevlar. What felt like an hour, it was probably less than that. No matter what, it was excruciating and extremely painful, and I still have those bent dog tags. But I didn't get a ninja punch. I didn't, I didn't get fucking hung from the third deck. So like, I would much rather have punishment over paperwork. So, and pain does retain in that circumstance, I guess you could say. So, learn from my mistakes, future generations.
Don't buy a motorcycle and
Yeah,
bring it.
that's PFCs at like 18, 19 going to SOI buying motorcycles.
Yep. Jesus. Oh, that was such a bad idea. But what are you going to do, man? Live and learn. We all do stupid shit. Oh, man. I just figure out a way to like that was bad. Yeah, that could have screwed us over in a huge way. But it was funny though, because it was like when we were in SOI, we were both 0341s, going through everything. It was like, it was us and V and Stone was in there. I mean, like, it was a cool collection of people in my opinion. But it was funny seeing how each one of us, when we got to the fleet, like, remember, because Sanderson was my one and only roommate in the Marine Corps. I lived in the barracks for like a week, right? And and I'm sure you'll remember this. He and I wake up, it's Saturday morning, and I open the door to our barracks room. Do you remember this? And it's just like... And we're like looking out at like Lake Mandini and like Joshua Tree. And I'm just going like, oh, what the fuck did I just do? Like, this is such a horrible place. Needless to say, I personally fell in love with 29 Palms from an operational standpoint and a training standpoint, not necessarily from the greatest place I've ever lived. But it was funny because later on that day, we went and talked to our platoon sergeant, and he looks at us and goes, "You guys are 0341s, huh?" He's like, "All right, forget your MOS. You're now a Humvee driver."
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's awesome. But little did I know we were going to get like up armor supercharged Humvees. Well, later on in the deployment, that's not exactly what we fell in on. In 2005, we each had like Mac kits and Kevlar blankets, but...
Yeah, and just tricolored green gear because they still hadn't phased out everything to tan.
Oh, man. You gotta love it, man. Doesn't matter. A Marine's wearing it. That's what makes the difference. That is what makes the difference. Hey, man, that's sweet gear.
At least when you guys left SOI, you had a group. Imagine being like, all right, you three, you guys are the unlucky ones. You guys are going to 29 Palms, and you're going on a bus with 3 angry Lance Corporals that thought they were going to be a lot more. It wasn't pleasant.
Yeah.
And it was the middle of the day, 2 p.m. driving from SOI to 29 Palms. Like,
it was supposed to be the middle of the day for us. I still believe that they legitimately no shit forgot though. And they were like, "Oh fuck yeah, we got those new guys coming in." Like, I honestly think that's what happened.
Yeah, we left Pendleton and got to 29 Palms at like 3 a.m. or something.
Well, when I broke my leg, I got back to stateside, and then nobody was at the airport.
Oh, dear God.
I called my parents. They picked me up from San Diego. I was like, all right, well, I'm definitely not going to base today because fuck those assholes. So I waited the weekend, and I was like, all right, they still don't know. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go in now. I go in and see the MO, and he puts me on 30 days of leave anyway. So I just went straight back out.
Hell yeah.
That was an interesting experience. I was like, I was like, okay, they completely forgot about me. Thanks, you fucking dickheads.
Ah, yes. Transportation out to 29 Palms. You know what's great? Shaking your head, driving all the way from LAX out to 29 Palms, coming off leave. Don't get me wrong, LA is not my favorite place in the world either, but like civilization, you're seeing some stuff, you're headed down 60, nothing. You're just like Morongo Basin, right?
Hey, Morongo Basin had a nice like backwind or whatever you call it, like carrying you through.
Yeah.
You can get to 140 miles an hour pretty quick.
Yeah.
Dude, the worst part about that drive for me was coming out of the canyon. When you come up like Indian Canyon Road or whatever, right near Cathedral City or Palm Springs or what have you, coming off the 10, and you start making your trek through the canyon, and then you hit Morongo, and remember that beat up 93 Buick LeSabre that I was driving around? Oh
Yeah.
my God, dude. It was just, you had to flutter the gas.
Monster.
The green monster, hell yes. You had to flutter the gas to get it up the hill. So it's like why am I fluttering the gas doing 30 miles an hour going uphill and on purpose trying to go to 29 Palms? Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? That like oh God damn it. Like, oh Jesus. You know, thankfully, when you got up to the high desert, it was, a straight shot over the base. But Jesus, I loathed that trip up the hill.
Hey, Sandy, remember 295, all right?
Right.
Do you recall ever seeing that freak creature that would hang out there in the middle of the night? Real would remember this because he saw it with me and would be like, there he is! But it was this weird little animal, like it had the body of a...
Was it like a two-headed dog or something like that?
It was weird. It was like the body of a chihuahua with like tufts of hair on his feet, a rat tail, and like a big giant rat head looking thing with a mane, and then it moved like a cat. And it was like no other creature I've ever seen. I tried to look into like crazy like Iraqi species of animal, nothing. Like this thing, and it would look at you like eyes just like, and it was always at night and through NVGs. But me and Real would be looking for it like anytime 295.
No, I don't remember doing that. It was a lot more peaceful second deployment, but I do remember being at 295 and I was a gunner on lead truck for Cat Blue, and we had our section leader, the LT, and stuff like that. But I think on this patrol, the LT wasn't with us. So we had the VC, we had our section leader, which was Castle, and he, it was pretty peaceful. It was a nice night out. It was kind of just cool outside, and a couple guys dismounted. We were like in 295, and it's just, we knew it was a lot safer. And so a couple guys dismounted, and Castle got out, and he walks over to this curb, and the streets are a lot cleaner because they had been cleaning up. There was one pile of trash they left and next to the curb, and I thought it was weird that he walked over to it. I was like, what? And I stood up, and I was like, what is he doing? I'm sitting here like, this is 295. He's just going to walk up to this pile of trash? And then I just got a really fucked up idea. So, and I don't know why I just did it. And in my head, I was like, I'm just going to take the consequences, because if this works, this is going to be the funniest story I've got this deployment. And he walks over to it. He kind of like starts kicking it around a little bit. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. And my heart's racing like, man, this is going to cause a lot of noise. It's going to give up our position, but I'm going to do it. And he goes to like reach down to reach for it. And I kind of like cut my hands over my mouth so it would project toward him. And I just went, boom! And I yelled it really loud right as he reached down. And it just made sense in my head at the time. And afterwards, I'm like, oh man, that's a really nice shot. And he kind of like shot back up. He shook real quick. He turned over and he was like, fuck you. Like, mother. And just was going up, and he was all like shaking up. He walked straight back to the truck, got in and closed the door, and he just socked me in the leg. He was so pissed. He's like, that scared the shit out of me.
Oh.
I was like, yeah, probably not funny to play with your life like that.
Stay frosty.
I was like, but it was worth. Yeah, it totally was worth it.
Oh God.
Oh, dude, that's epic. Did you ever say the dick in my hands prayer when you were taking a piss in Ramadi?
Oh yeah.
Please, dear God, don't let me die with my dick in my hands. Like my weapon is in the corner right now. Or like, oh God, remember those fucking flight suits? Like, hey, gents,
Yep.
this happened. This is a true story. You probably remember this because I had to get Copeland involved in this. So I'd love to have you on the show. So that way you can talk about how much of a giant asswipe I am. But I radio up to lead truck and I was like, hey there, some of my guys need to make a head call to include myself, wondering if we could take a quick security halt. And they're like, God damn it. They're like, piss in a fucking bottle. So here I am over PRR. And I'm like, yeah, it's not that kind of a head call. And they're like, oh, Jesus. And so we stop and it's like on Sunset next to the Gov Center where all those roll-up doors are, south of 295. Like, where the fuck am I gonna go? And we dismount and walk across the street over to this, this family's home. Keep in mind now, it's like 7:30 in the morning and people are starting to get up and stuff, and everybody's like waiting to use this Iraqi bathroom. And here comes this 6'2" Marine with too much fucking gear on, rocking a flight suit. And they were gracious enough to let me skip to the head of the line. Dude, I stripped down all my gear, literally all the way down to nothing, right? Because you're in a flight suit, not a tank suit. So it's like you gotta get the exposure you need. I strip everything down. I turn around and I must have thought I was in fucking America or something. I turn around and there's that like hole in the floor with like the two footprints that you stand in to like squat down. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, oh, this is just the worst, man. This is just awful. Like I'm about to pee out my ass. This is going to be horrid. I've been dipping all night long and eating like, fucking ketchup flavored potato chips and pounding rippets. Like I'm about to blow this motherfucker up. I came walking out of there and so now I'm in full battle rattle and the whole family is sitting out in the courtyard like, whoo, like, oh Jesus, like hearts and minds, people, just trying to win hearts and minds. It's just, oh God, but that's one of those things, man. You never ever think about that and you never ever train for that. I have honestly never trained to make a head call. I've never worked that into my training scenario.
You did in boot camp?
No. What I'm saying though is like, dude, you're out at like 2:15 doing a patrol and stuff like that.
That is conspicuously absent from our training schedule.
That's it. I'm writing
combat
an article on
shit.
It. Please, dear God, don't let me die with my dick in my hands. Dude, we never trained to that shit, man. I'm telling you right now. What do you do when you got to take a piss? Whip that shit out and just keep walking? Done that before. You got to tuck the nut protector up underneath your interceptor when you pull that number. But like, dude, Tail End Charlie, Cat White, second tour. Tail End Charlie was like, well, I was dismounted patrol leader for the first half. Second half, we switched off with another VC. And then I became like Tail End Charlie, which was so awesome. And I'm like walking backwards, doing whatever, taking pot shots at dogs. And like fucking trying to piss without getting, urine all over my goddamn nut protector. Meanwhile, Juslin's the next guy up, like, hey man, where the fuck are you? I'm like, I'm good. Not a big deal. Oh my God. Well, it's like, again, man, just, Juslin and I being together in Cat White and being rack mates and fellow vehicle commanders, we like bouncing stories off one another. And my favorite story that involves my good compatriot here, because honestly believe he probably saved my life that day, we're setting up a cordon on Route Apple. All right, this is 2007. I have the northernmost truck. We have to walk further out, obviously, in order to set up all the razor wire and the signs that say warning, stay back, and shit like that. We're walking back to the truck. I had flipped around to check my 6, every 4 step or whatever. Swing back around to look forward, and literally the ground gives way below me, and I just go straight up to my armpits. And what had happened was the sidewalk, the street, whatever the fuck, literally was a sinkhole, and I was covered in piss and shit and garbage and the most awful thing you can think of, just like God only knows what the hell was in there. And I'm like, Juslin, and I'm scrambling for my PR. Juslin, dude, I need your help. Like, where are you, man? Like, what's up? You're not there. Walk towards my voice. Juslin, walk towards my voice. And he walks up to me and he's like, where the fuck are you? And I'm like, I'm down here. And it's like, how the fuck did you get down there, man? And I'm like, dude, I'm up to my fucking nipples and goddamn shit and piss right now, man. Help me the fuck out. He's got me by like the bitch strap on the back of the flak, like heaving and pulling me backwards on top of himself. I'm sure trying to dodge the fucking 6 feet of stench that are coming out of this pool of filth and it was just gross.
Well, I had a shit-eating grin on my face the whole time because it was so funny.
Oh my God. It was so bad. I went back to the truck and we literally just got there. We had been there for all of 20 minutes. I sat in the truck and Lopez is sitting in the gun and he's like,
go back.
Go Penny. You smell like shit. I'm like, yeah, man. And I told him the story. Like, staff sergeant comes up. My socks are like hanging on the mirror of my Humvee. He's like, Penny, why the fuck are your socks? And he opens the door at the same time. And he's like, dear God, man. Dear God. What the fuck is that? And I tell him the story. And he's like, well, all right, Boots, have fun dealing with that shit. And throws the fucking door shut. Doesn't say another word, just walks back down. Dude, I sat in that fucking truck for 6 hours. For 6 straight hours, thinking that it was going to be 12, and thank God they gave us, like, the lunch break rotation. I never want to be that filthy again in my entire life, dude. Sweat and dust and mud and all of that other stuff be damned. So, dude, it's basically like doing swim PT in Lake Bandini, man. like, and then walking around for 6 hours in that filth. Oh, Jesus, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Thanks, Juss.
And yet,
thanks for pulling me out.
All the gunners would just start lobbing candy into that shit, and the kids would dive in, pull it out, and eat it.
Yep.
It's like, whoa.
Oh, man.
Remember that one kid that would beat up the other kids? He was this big fat kid, and he would
Thug Life. Yes, we called him Thug Life.
No, well, there's a video of some Iraqi kid doing something, but I don't know if it was the same
not
kid
the same
that we're
kid. I know what you're talking about. I've seen that video circulating around the web, but I know exactly what you mean.
Like, he would just run up to other kids and just start beating the crap out of them.
And it was always in the back of the head. It was always a donkey punch.
Yeah. He wasn't as big as that kid in that one video, but I remember seeing that kid, yeah.
Dude, that dude's 20 years old right now.
See, as family-oriented as those people are, the inverse of that is, and Sandy, you might have seen this too, is you'd see like a 2-year-old in the street alone in the middle of the day. You're like, why the fuck is this? And he's like sitting in a puddle of shit or something, and you're just like, there's no reason for this to happen. Like, there's like this weird dichotomy there between the two. Like, you can see the family orientedness, and then you can see just, I don't know.
You know, of course, there's children that are in the battlefield, and it's one of those deals to where it's like, you know, there are unfortunate circumstances at every turn, and I definitely remember the kids more than I remember the faces of the adults. And
Yeah.
I definitely interacted more with the kids also, for the simple fact that they are 20 years old now. You know, for the simple fact that
Yeah.
children are always the future. So, you know, it's funny because it's going back to your point, just specifically, is like, you see these kids that are playing around out in the streets all the time. And again, it's just my opinion, but like, I didn't think that Iraqis really had that bad of homes. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times when we went into a courtyard, like, the grass was usually neatly kept. It was usually tidy. Like, I usually didn't go into an Iraqi compound going like, oh my God, it's just a clusterfuck in here. You know, right outside of the wall, oh yeah. It was odd in the sense that, like, if I was a child growing up in that environment, I could definitely understand a safe haven in being in and around my family, yet being, you know, I was a kid myself once, so having that like yearning to be able to go out and explore and see all of these different things, you know, to be able to go and you know, I'm gonna use the analogy of ride my bike around the neighborhood and stuff like that. You know, like, they can't do that. So, you know, it's one of those things where it's like the hardships and the tragedies that occur. You got kids that are just roaming all over the streets and stuff because they're doing the same thing that kids would probably do. Now, 2-year-olds crawling through a puddle of shit and piss, that's the high and right, you know, that's the high and right mentality right there. But like, you know, walking around and exploring the streets and all the kids like selling sodas or coming up and you know, selling flatbread and goat and stuff like that, or rice and all sorts of stuff. Like, my favorite kid thing ever, and every Marine's seen this, is kid jaw stretched as wide as he can get it open, and he's just pointing at his mouth, right? Going, chocolate, chocolate. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'll give you some chocolate, buddy. Jesus, good effort. My God. Every once in a while, the kid got some Copenhagen. Well, not Copenhagen. But, you know, every once in a while, the kid got a little dip of Polar Ice. I'm just saying. You know, he wanted to know what it was. So, what is that? Chocolate? No, it's not chocolate. Chocolate? Mr. Wahid? Chocolate? Okay, man, here you go. And that kid puts it in his mouth and just turns green. And it's like, yeah, that was a bad idea, man. It ain't chocolate, you know. It's in Afghan culture, they actually, believe it or not. So you know how Iraqis typically didn't dip. At least I didn't see Iraqis dip. Afghans have what they call sweet gay, and sweet gay is like, it's like crazy shit, man. What they do, dude, it's so crazy. So it's still like tobacco and other things, but they put out like, it's like fucking insulation, like that shredded insulation goes all over, like a form of like preservative similar to formaldehyde goes all over. I've dipped that shit before, and that'll mess your day up, man. That'll strip the paint off your house and give your family a permanent orange afro, man. I wasn't seeing straight when I fucking threw that shit in. You know, I'll throw a fatty hog leg in before I step outside the wire on patrol, but a dip of sweet gay, negative. You guys can have that shit. My God. You know, but it's funny because they thought American tobacco and American dip was the most disgusting thing in the world. They were like, that's gross, man. Why would you do that? And I'm like, you're packing fucking housing insulation into your, like.
Yeah.
But, hey, brother, we should wrap this up. We really got to get going. Lovely chatting with you. What I find great about these talks, you know, if you're a Marine or a former FMF corpsman, past or present, any one of you, please get in touch with us. You're more than welcome to be a guest on the show. You can say pretty much whatever the hell you want. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review the podcast, send in your comments. Honestly, it makes the show. You know, look us up on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Please, as I've said before, join this conversation. We're here for you guys.